Hello, Eugene. I appreciate your videos and your input, and I have to say, in large measure, I agree with you. Funnily enough, I suppose this rift, as they call it, or the, rather the identification of a rift, and the fact that we acknowledge that there is one, can be, for better or worse, laid at my feet. After all, I kind of started all of this in some way, shape, or form, in a rather direct manner, although this has been addressed previously by Barbaros in the past, but I sort of, well, I lit the fire, as it were. Now, pardon me, I have to say I agree with you. There's certainly a faction of men and women, supposedly within interested in men's rights in general, supposedly, whose primary interest is actually the reparation of the male-female relationship. The idea that it's broken now, but in the past it hadn't been broken, and somehow we can fix it. Of course, if you know my videos, I am of the opinion that the relationship has always been broken, so there's nothing to fix. And I've also advocated understanding the male-female relationship as a starting point for understanding men's rights, and that men's rights is not only about, or certainly it's not about at all, the male-female relationship and repairing it. So, yes, this is a what seems to be a core issue, and the cause of the rift is quite simple. That some of us believe that men's rights is about the things you talked about, uh, addressing misandry and its effects throughout society on the male psyche, and so on and so forth. And some people think that men's rights is about relationships with women and how to fix them. And more specifically, fatherhood. Fatherhood is an element of men's rights, but it isn't the only one. Now, it would be nice if we could separate out the fatherhood element from this whole relationship element, fixing relationships, but it seems quite difficult. Now, there is a rift, uh, appear to be an agreement, and I look at it this way. We might have been playing nice and pretending all along that we have exactly the same goals and interests, but I look at the analogy as being uh, sitting at the table, half the people are vegetarians, and the others are meat eaters, and uh, they all have the common goal of food and sustenance. One never eats meat, the other prefers meat. There you go. These are very different goals. Um, the other thing you'll see in this faction, has been pointed out many times, is they tend to politicize everything. And no doubt misandry is present in politics, but this idea that left-wing Marxism is responsible for all the ills of the world, and we only know where to fix it. You'll also see a lot of phony libertarianism. I say phony because a lot of the people who claim to be libertarians advocate things that are simply not in concert with libertarian philosophy, such as preventing certain types of people from having children or not having children, and all sorts of things like this. That is force and coercion, which is very anti-libertarian. So you see all kinds of things. And one thing I only watched regarding Cajun Louise, I really have no interest in her whatsoever, but I did watch the snippet of her response to Barbarossa. The original video had been taken down. And this is what I'm talking about. I forgot exactly where, but she does talk about something to the effect of her duty to the nation. So we'll also see a lot of false patriotism, or some inflated, bloated patriotism, which often goes hand in hand with right-wing politics, pose as a solution to all our ills and all our problems. It's very clear that Cajun Louise is a traditionalist. Um, by various statements she made, and when she talks talking about her something to the effect of their duty to her nation and what have you. I'm an American too, but I don't have a duty to my nation. I have a duty to no one but perhaps myself and those I choose to offer my friendship and my love to. But I certainly don't have a duty to my nation. And whilst I'm grateful of born in under certain circumstances. You get my drift. You'll see a lot of that too. That's also a manifestation of the kinds of things that of this sort of factionalism, and it is, I find, very detrimental. But until the rift is necessary, because we do need to call these people out. There's no doubt about that. Can't pretend that there's not a problem. It's like I said. It's like pretending vegetarians and meat eaters are the same thing. They're not. They have very distinct goals. Is the goal of the men's rights movement the reparation of the male-female relationship, something that has always been broken, but had restraints and constraints on it? Or is it something else? Is it about men's rights? Is it about misandric laws? And the question, where do these misandric laws come from? That's another issue. A lot of these same people will say these misandric laws come from left-wing Marxism, and it's bullshit. They come, as you talk about in your video, from female nature itself, and from letting loose the floodgates of that nature. So these things are unfortunately necessary to address, and sometimes things need to be called what they are. It is very clear that, as Barbarossa said, many men are a blowjob away from jumping ship. Their interest is not men's rights, but finding the right, as you said, finding the right girl, or trying to repair, or on a more massive scale, trying to repair the male-female relationship. You can't fix something that's always been broken. It's never been fixed. And as some have said, we've always existed in a sort of tenuous alliance with women in the best of times and the worst of times, an all-out gender war. Can't pretend that things have been otherwise. One, a lot of the one reason I'm so strongly opposed to this faction of men and women who purportedly are for men's rights is because of certain elements, the political elements. For example, their total lack of concern for male disposability, men being sent off to war, dying for illegitimate causes, killing other men in other countries that have never done anything to them, and vice versa. They never express concern for these things, and it really deeply bothers me and concerns me. And like I said, there's this extreme focus on this idea of left-wing Marxism, and the left is this and the left is that. Look, I can't stand the left or the right. In my politics, I proudly wear the lowercase L libertarian, and we see this as this finger pointing. Of course, the left is fraught with problems, and I can't so readily associate with people who advocate things like wealth confiscation, all that. And I don't want to go off too much on a tangent here, but also, like I said, the right-wing politics, who point fingers at the Marxists, they do not care about male disposability. In fact, what they advocate, which appears to me is something I call the argument for lesser disposability, that in modern society, perhaps a man should still be disposable, but a little bit less than usual. And so I just can't get on board with that. And it really does need to be relentlessly pointed out. These people are blinded by ideology, essentially. An ideology which has created a boo man and left. And and if this boo man is gotten rid of or killed off, then everything's going to be fixed. I agree with you. This is not about repairing the male-female relationship. This is about, to me at least, and I think now I slightly differ, understanding what it is to be a man in this society, in this world, understanding how to deal with the fact that misandry is almost omnipresent, and going from there. Now, I am a man going my own way, and I think that, that is a semi-separate issue, but the simple fact is that a lot of these men, they're just looking to get back to something that never was, and I'm pretty disappointed expansion Barbarossa is, and you are as well, how many men just jump on board the minute a woman offers some nice, some compliments or what have you. Now, in my latest video, I talk about this. What is the value of man? Is the value of man his relationship to the woman? Him inseminating a bunch of eggs in her uterus? Is that all a man is worth? And the subsequent working himself to death so he can provide for them, only to be betrayed later on? And even if he's not betrayed, to have someone who looks at him merely as a tool and utility, is that all a man is worth? That is the source of this misandry, male disposability. These guys who grovel at the feet of women clearly have no conscience with regards to this. And as Barbarossa said quite eloquently, they're a blowjob away from jumping ship. It's a lack of self-control, I imagine, and just misunderstanding of things. And I want to address one last point, this idea that we can't afford infighting or what have you. This isn't infighting. It's simply saying that some of us are vegetarians and some of us are meat eaters. We want very, very different things. And I totally agree with you, if these men and the women who go along with them want traditional relationships, let them do it. They can find each other right here on YouTube, apparently. That's not what this is about. And it's not about defeating the left either. I mean, to the extent that we can, there are three things that, to the extent that they can, need to be kept out of men's rights. And I've said this repeatedly, as has Barbarossa. Race has no place whatsoever in men's rights. Religion has no place whatsoever in men's rights. The minute we start bringing that in, the minute we have a lot of problems, and then we get even more factionalism, and that can be very dangerous. Regarding politics, it's rather difficult to keep it all out, in a sense, because everything is so politicized, and misandry is politicized in our institutions. But to the extent that we can, avoid this sort of finger-pointing, the right-left paradigm, and the left is evil and the right's evil. I think they're both equally evil for similar and different reasons, but I don't see this as an issue of left and right. And anyone who thinks about it and thinks about human nature and human and female nature and male nature will be able to recognize that without any problems. So to the extent that we can, let's keep politics out. We have to, and certainly race and religion. Every now and then we see comments about black men, white men, or Jewish men, or Jewish women, and so on. It adds nothing, and it's not contributing anything. But yeah, we do need to call these people out, because if we want very different things, and I think we manifestly do, if we're interested in advocating for men's rights, male individual sovereignty, his right to not be suppressed and oppressed in a society that basically hates him, rather than fixing the relationship which has always been broken. But these are very different issues. There is one issue that I think we need to explore in the future further, and that is certainly with divorce court and child custody and things of this nature. I mean, once you've bought in and have decided to father children, that of course is an issue. And that's something that needs to be addressed, and I do think it's part of men's rights. But it's tricky. You know, where does that start and where does it end? Because if we go too much down that route, then we're going to end up in a situation where we talk about men and women and relationships, and that's what it's all about. We need to move away from the female aspect and talk about what's good for us men. Because the fact is that women for millennia now have been asking themselves constantly, and that's all they care about, what's good for them. Maybe it's time we start asking ourselves what's good for us as men as well. And women have plenty of people to get their back. Other women, most men. We need to identify what men's rights is actually about, and ideally we should show support, solidarity for those men who recognize what men's rights is all about, and support. And we do need to call out the bullshit when we see it. It's the way I see it. And I appreciate your contribution, and thank you very much for making your video.